Hello and welcome back to How to Game Differently. Today, I've got a guest with me. Introduce yourself.
All right. Well, I'm Ty Dukin, and I'm here from Down the Warp Pipe.
Is that how you do it? The
No,
Dukin
actually, it's
bit?
not. No, I have it actually like the actual recording, and so I just fit it in with the
I
timing.
was going to say
I
that
leave a
was
blank spot.
I was going to say that was really good. I was really impressed with that. Anyway, we're not going to be talking about Street Fighter.
No, not today.
No. So we're going to be talking about the recent news that Microsoft are kind of broadening their horizons of using Game Pass in different ways. So recently, Phil Spencer had done a bit of like a pre-E3 interview talking about how they're still wanting to evolve and develop the Xbox brand and consoles and stuff, but they want to move away from it. And the idea is that, everyone who has an Xbox is a customer of theirs, but that's a small niche because you have to have the Xbox console to be able to play the games. So the whole idea that they're going with is, using other means of doing it. So your phone, your tablet, your laptop. And they were recently discussing about how they're going to do it on television. So my kind of thought, because I had this thought originally that cloud gaming is the future, and I think a lot of things are going to be going that way. And I was kind of brought Ty along to this because I thought it'd be a really cool discussion to see if we have the same thoughts and opinions of, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? And how do we see the future with it all? So first question, if Microsoft go down this route, do you think it's going to be a success, or do you think it's going to be a big failure?
For me, I think it's kind of I think it will be a success, but I don't think it'll be a success in the way that people would traditionally define it as a success. So I don't think it's going to replace what they're doing with Xbox. I think it'll just be like a nice kind of add-in. So for anyone that doesn't really know right now, if you have Game Pass Ultimate, which is the one that you need on the Xbox console, PC has its own separate cheaper tier that you can get. But on the console version, you can actually use Game Pass on an Android phone. And I think you had mentioned that they're going to be opening it up to work on Chrome browsers and things like that very shortly. So I think will be a success in drawing people in to be on Xbox. And Microsoft has sort of changed the idea. It's not that you own an Xbox console, it's that you use Xbox as a platform. And so regardless of whether it's on your phone, on a web browser, on your console, or on your PC, you're somehow subscribed to Game Pass in order to get access to all that stuff. And I think it's already a success that way. I don't think the streaming portion is a success. I haven't had any luck trying it so far. There's too much latency. But I think as things evolve and as internet gets faster, it's just kind of where things will go. And if anything, I could see Microsoft actually becoming like a defense for traditional gaming and traditional consoles and stuff like that against Google and against Amazon.
Yeah, because Google have already tried this with Stadia, and I've never tried it, but everything I've read on is that it's basically a complete failure.
Yeah, and I think that's because they didn't do what Game Pass is doing. You had to buy the games individually, whereas Game Pass, you just subscribe and you have access to this big library.
Exactly, and it's kind of viewing it as the Netflix approach, where you have a selection of content that you can take in as whenever you please, and will eventually swap them out just to give a bit of like a fresh look onto the page and such. Because there's like a range, isn't it, from the original Xbox 360, Xbox One, and like new releases. Because I think they said that Halo Infinite is going to go straight onto Games Pass, isn't it?
Yeah. So the cool thing is that actually yesterday I was waiting, just basically hanging out with a buddy of mine. I was like, I don't know what to play. I'm gonna play the new Ratchet when it comes out, but I want something to play in between, and I don't want to start up Mass Effect 2 yet. So I just jumped on to Game Pass, and I was playing Black from EA from the original Xbox on my Xbox Series X, and it was just running perfect. And that's something that was on Game Pass. I could have played it on my phone if I had wanted to, and like say gone out back into like the backyard and just started playing it on my phone the same way I would with my Switch. But that would have been an option I could have done there, which is just it's a nice add-on, but I don't think it'll ever fully take over having a device in front of you, at least in our lifetimes.
Yeah, because I was thinking about like how technology is kind of slowed down at the moment, and because I think we may have had this discussion before with like the new generation of consoles, it doesn't seem that big of a jump compared to its original counterparts and stuff. So I think the industry is kind of looking at how can we make this more exciting, because correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the gaming industry is like the biggest kind of like entertainment industry at the moment.
It is. Yeah, it is now. It's taken over music and movies as the most relevant thing for teenagers, actually. And also not just money wise, but like in terms of amount of like social consciousness that it has. It's the number one thing, which is just insane to me, because I remember being the weird kid in elementary school that played video games and got excited about them, and everyone else was just like, okay, all right.
Because I think I was kind of part of the generation where gaming was a bit more normalized, particularly when it got to the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 era, when everyone was like playing Call of Duty or FIFA and stuff like that. But yeah, so again, kind of throwing it back, I do think they're just trying to make it as fresh as possible, and seeing how all these other companies are still surviving, like Amazon Prime, and like how Disney have got their own platform now, because they had a platform called Disney Life before. But
really?
They had their own one beforehand, but it was bare minimum. They barely had anything on there, so they kind of scrapped it. And it's like, right, let's completely rebrand it, make it Disney Plus, have it as a Netflix competitor, get everything on it. So again, I think Microsoft is really heading to that direction, because they bought up Bethesda, they bought who was the other companies they bought up recently?
So they bought up Bethesda, which you mentioned, and they got basically like a whole slew of games from that. So they got Arcane, which is Dishonored and Prey. They got Machine Games, which is Wolfenstein. They got id, which is Doom and Quake, all kind of bundled in that, as well as like Elder Scrolls and Fallout, and now Starfield as well. Which, if you don't think that's going to be an Xbox exclusive, you're mistaken. That's absolutely going to be an Xbox exclusive.
Do you think so?
Well, PC as well, 100%. There's no question.
I was going to say like PC, it'd have to come out on PC, but
yeah, well, that's their whole game, or their whole shtick, is that it's an Xbox and PC exclusive, which I think is brilliant, personally. But I think that you might see stuff like Elder Scrolls 6 on other consoles, but it won't be on Game Pass on those consoles. So the subscription I have to Game Pass will just get me that day one. I don't have to buy the game for, in Canadian dollars, would be $90 plus tax. So effectively, you buy a new game, 5 games get you a console.
Yeah, and you kind of bring up an interesting point, actually. Like, so if Game Pass evolves into how it's looking like, so it could be on your phone, it could be like the app icon that you go next to, compared to like, again, Prime and all that kind of stuff. But obviously there's been quite a lot of rumors of Game Pass going to the Nintendo Switch, and so I was be interested to see what you think of this. Like, do you think it would get so big that fine, Nintendo may put it on, but do you think it's going to be big enough to pressure Sony to have it on their PlayStation platform?
That's an interesting question. So I actually think it going onto the Switch would both A, make sense because they've used some games like Hitman and I believe Control as well, where they use cloud computing. So I think that it makes sense that Nintendo would allow it on their platform, especially if they're getting a cut from every subscription that's using Game Pass. But I think it would be a smart move. Also, Nintendo and Microsoft have a kind of history where Microsoft wanted to actually buy Nintendo and say, okay, look, we're hardware guys. This is just before the original Xbox came out. And they were going to buy Nintendo and say, you guys make the games and we'll make the hardware. So we were almost in a universe where Mario was on Xbox.
Yeah, because that did happen as well, didn't it?
Yeah. And Nintendo laughed them out. They just completely laughed them out of the room, which, I mean, congratulations. You've pulled a PlayStation again, made another rival for yourself. But I think that would have been a really interesting thing because Nintendo has all their gimmicks. But for me, that's the thing I like least about Nintendo. I don't like their motion control stuff. I don't like their like little innovative things for the most part. But the one things that they do, like the Switch, with the portability and everything, that works for me. So whenever they hit it, for me, they hit it out of the park, which means we wouldn't have gotten the Switch, which arguably means we wouldn't have got something like Game Pass with xCloud, which is how you play it on your phone or on your PC in terms of streaming.
Yeah, exactly. Because they'll always constantly try to outdo one another. Because, like you say, with the motion controls, with like the Wii, for instance, they had, Sony had that weird controller with the bowl attached to it,
the ice cream cone.
I hadn't heard anyone call it that, but I like that. And then obviously Xbox had Kinect, didn't they, to like try and their own wacky thing, which again no one ever used.
No one does it as good as Nintendo, and no one does it other than Nintendo, which is the weird thing.
Yeah, I guess it's just like their mindset is that they don't go for the graphics, they don't go for the power or anything. They go for like, how can we make it as interesting and entertaining as humanly possible? And for the most part, it works. Every time they try something new, and like I say, Wii, that was a massive success. Tried something a bit different with the Wii U, but had the worst marketing in the world. And
that
Switch,
could have done better.
yeah. But it was kind of like a beta for the Switch, which obviously is
true, it was
a huge success. Whilst Xbox, Microsoft, they've stuck to the same thing every single time. But now they've taken it on that they have to do something different because, last generation, PlayStation destroyed Xbox, in my opinion, at least.
Oh, 100%. There's no question that they did. I owned an Xbox One and a PlayStation 4 at launch, and I eventually sold off my Xbox One because there was not really any reason to own it. I could play all those games on my PC at the time, and why would I bother having it? It was nice, but I just eventually sold it off. I wish I kept it, but more so just because of the arcade stick and Killer Instinct.
Very specific reason, but I like it. but again, you had like a really good point there, the fact that you could play these games on the PC. So again, they like you mentioned before, like they have the beauty of having things on the Xbox, things on the PC, and now they're evolving it of, well, we can have it everywhere. And this goes back to the original point of, all their clients are people who have an Xbox, but now let's make it that everyone could be a client because everyone automatically has a device that can do it. And it was interesting you telling me about the whole being able to play it on your phone, because right now it's only Android, it's not iOS at the moment. And you said like it's a bit laggy with the more modern games, but the older games it's totally fine, which is fine because it's still in the beta phase. But again, it's one of those weird ones where you have to kind of, it's a waiting game, isn't it? Wait to see how 5G plays out, because
I think that'll make a big difference.
Yeah, because like over here in the UK, we haven't really got proper 5G yet. I don't know how things over in Canada with that.
Nope, not at all. Like they'll say 5G, but it's going to be another 5 years before we get anything proper, I think.
Oh yeah, cool. No, that's fair enough. Yeah, because it's other than people burning the towers because it was causing a virus. But anyway, we won't get into that.
No political discourse right now. But
no, exactly. Cut that out. But yeah,
I think more to your point, I don't think you'll ever see Game Pass on PlayStation. I don't think you'll ever see it. I think if anything, you might see PlayStation games on Game Pass, which you've already seen actually with MLB The Show.
Oh, okay. I hadn't heard that.
So it actually was a game that launched day and date, PlayStation and Xbox. And on PlayStation, you had to pay $90 for it. So full price game. So 90 Canadian dollars, which would be equivalent of, I think, 70 pounds or so for you guys.
50, 60.
50?
Like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Something like, roughly that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's a brand new price game. Or if you had Game Pass, you had it day one. Just included in your subscription to Game Pass, pay the price of about 2.5 games a year, and you would have gotten it day one. Same with, whenever there's something new, like The Medium that came out, which, I mean, admittedly was an indie game, but it was like a pretty high profile for Xbox at the time indie game. Day one on there. Outriders as well, which that fizzled and burnt really fast, but day one on Game Pass Ultimate as well. So right there, those 3 games would have basically had you paid for the year.
Yeah, because that was that's kind of been like the appeal to me for Xbox Game Pass of like you have just access to. I think they have something like, is it 100 games? They make sure there's at least 100 games that you can play at a time. And,
I think right now it's about 153 because it includes EA Play as well. So you have access to the back catalog of EA games as well.
Yeah, because that was a recent collaboration they did, wasn't it? Having that on it, which again, like really smart move. And I think again, if Microsoft keep doing these, getting over these other companies in and stuff, it's like again, it'll be like the Netflix of like, where else do you go to play all these games? And so this was going to bring up a question to you, like, do you think if Xbox Game Cloud becomes the next Netflix, do you think there's going to be ever any need for people to actually physically own a game? Because since Netflix, I don't buy DVDs or purchase films or anything.
I still do from time to time. So I think what'll happen, and it's kind of the philosophy that I'm going into Game Pass with, which is I'll subscribe to Game Pass. That way I get to play all the games, kind of like the rental stores back in the day. And, whether you own an Xbox console or you don't, cool, you can do it. But if you do own an Xbox console or a PC, in the future, you can always decide to pick up, more specifically on the console side, a physical copy of it for your own personal library. But because it's on Game Pass, those physical copies are very low in price. So you can, on sale for like, say, like a Boxing Day or something like that, you can get like brand new, came out that year, Xbox games for like $12, $15 because they're on Game Pass. So they don't really have any value, except as soon as they're off Game Pass in, say, like 5 years, because, for example, like Forza Horizon 3, you can't get on Game Pass anymore. You can't even buy it digitally. It no longer exists. So I own a physical copy of it. That's how I can play it. So there is value to still having the physical copy of the game. It's just not when it comes out and not right away, but eventually there's a reason to have it because it might get removed off Game Pass and it might get removed off of you being able to buy it digitally. But if you own it digitally or you own it physically, you can still play it.
So do you think that's going to like hurt the industry if it's affecting the prices so much? And again, if they just kind of wipe the game off the subscription, and then people are then desperate to find it physically, and then the prices jump up, scalpers would just go crazy for it.
Yeah, it's going to shoot the prices up like crazy in certain scenarios. I think that we probably won't get that for a while, and that's because the Xbox stuff isn't as beloved as something like Mario. So, like with the
Yeah,
Mario 3D All Stars,
yeah,
perfect example of something like that happening. I bought a physical copy myself that I'm never opening and never playing, and a digital copy to play.
yeah.
But that shot up like crazy in price, and it probably will continue to do that. But I didn't buy it to resell it. I bought it just to like kind of have as like a little trophy on my shelf.
Yeah, yeah, and to be fair, I got it. Was it due to Mofo? You know, fear of missing out.
Yeah,
Because in my mind, I was like, I don't need it. You know, I've got tons of other games. And then it was 2 days after it was released. I was like, ah, I need to get it just in case it goes and like prices jump up. And to be fair, the prices were steady all the way through up till they so-called cut it up. But you can still buy it in stores over here for like the
yeah.
regular
You
price.
can find it here and there for like the odd store. You might be able to find it, but it's slowly going up in price overall for us here. But the bigger thing I think is that it'll change the industry, not so much ruin game prices. So what a lot of developers have said, at least they're on the Xbox side, like Obsidian, who
Yeah,
makes Fallout New Vegas, and then they also made like KOTOR 2, and are now working on Grounded. Um, they basically said that the thing that was cool about Game Pass is that it allows them to be more creative and create smaller things with smaller teams. So I think we might actually end up shifting in terms of like there's more games that are available. There may be not as many big tentpole games, but there's more available for more types of people. So if you don't like social games and you like single player games, great. We've got you with these single player games and you get them kind of released. The thing that I always thought was cool is if they would release like how they have the episodic content with the Telltale games,
yeah,
but make something that was like a week by week, kind of like a TV show or how a TV show used to be. And you could release content for the game week by week. So you're gating the player's progress in it, but you're allowing it to create a water cooler moment for people at work. So they can talk about it with their friends because not everyone has the same amount of time in a week to play. But if you release, say, 2 to 4 hours of content a week, most people can get through that in a week.
yeah. Because there's been a few games that have tried to mimic that, like obviously Splatoon 2, and that they did it so that there was like gradual updates and obviously Splatfests and stuff. But then
Yeah.
the new Marvel Avengers game has that where I think it was something like every 4 months they would like add a new character into it with its own story and everything. And surprisingly, correct me if I'm wrong, they don't charge anything for that as well. It's like
Yeah, they don't.
yeah,
Yeah. It's totally free, which is cool.
yeah, which is really like rare these days.
Mhm.
Could you imagine if EA
Personally,
tried
they would charge you for it somehow. They'd find a way. It's like it would
that?
be running your computer or your console with mining Bitcoin or Ethereum in the background. And you'd have no idea.
Yeah. Anyway, you were going to say something.
No, I was just going to say, like with Avengers, it's cool, but also it's too long of a hiatus. It needs to be more condensed down. Like even something like the Telltale games that were released sort of in 3-month chunks, that's too long, at least to get like those cool water cooler moments.
Yeah.
You need something that's digestible in a week and then say have it over the course of 2 or 3 months and release it, or just kind of each week you're getting a little chunk of it, which could also work really cool for like an MMO or something like that. So rather than having these big drops of content, you're giving out little bits. So if someone wants to wait and play it all at once, they can. And if they want to play it week by week, they can also do that.
Yeah, which is probably the ideal scenario. Because if you compare it to say like Fortnite, where they have like near like a big event every 2 weeks, and then obviously because they have the pass scheme in it, so there's always something new happening. But they have like concerts and like I think they showed a film once through it and things like that.
Yeah,
But
it's really
if
weird.
you,
I doesn't really
yeah,
resonate with me, but
oh yeah, yeah. Like, I'm not hating on the game, but I don't play it. It's not my thing. But
yeah,
I,
I've played it
I
here and there a little bit with some friends, but that's about it.
yeah, but I have to respect for massive respect for what they're doing with it. But what I try and get at is like they do all these things, but if you don't attend that day, you completely miss it. Whilst if
Yeah, which is kind of a problem, I find.
yeah, yeah,
It creates a
which
lot of, well, FOMO, like you mentioned earlier.
yeah, exactly, yeah, and it could affect more than just the industry. Like gaming industry could affect people's lives completely because some countries are totally hooked on mobile games and things, and if they miss out on something, you know, they either run home, lose their job, or whatever crazy. Because I know
Yeah.
over in Japan, there was at least one company, or there was a couple companies that had basically a bank holiday for their employees so they could play the latest Monster Hunter. Because it's
Yeah, that
like
sounds
that.
about right. I believe
Yeah,
that.
because they just love Monster Hunter so much, and they just knew people would go take time off anyway. So they're like, we'll be nice. We'll like let you have a day off.
I haven't done that at all. That's not at all what I'm doing right now.
I remember the days of when like a new game would come out while we're at high school, and just like conveniently people would just be off.
I was actually telling my wife about that just last night. She's like, "Well, what did you do in high school?" I'm like, I signed myself out of class, or I took a spare and took a photography class, which I never went to class for the credit because I didn't need it, but I took it because
Yeah.
I found it fun, and I just went home and played Diablo 2.
Why not?
That's how I had a level 99 hardcore barbarian.
I just I know my dad will probably end up watching this because he watches for quite a lot of my stuff. But when I was younger, I used to always be ill, and reality, I was playing Pokemon on the Game Boy. And if my parents were coming, I'd slip it underneath the pillow or was down the side of the bed.
That's good.
And like the DS was the perfect thing because it closed over, so it looked like it was
Yep.
off. I think Nintendo designed it that way purely for us kids that could sneak it.
Oh yeah, there's something they're not admitting to that they knew.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, let's get back onto Xbox.
Back on topic though.
Back on topic. Anyway, what was I going to say? Yeah. So one of the cool things I think Game Pass is doing is that they do keep a lot of history in the catalog. So you can be playing games from Xbox, you can play them from Xbox 360 and so on, and like they have I can't remember the company that does it, but Banjo and Kazooie.
Yeah, Rare.
Yeah. So they got all those games, which obviously were on like the Nintendo 64 and stuff like that. So they have this history of catalog of games, which I think that's probably the best thing about it, because
It really is. Yeah.
me being a Nintendo fan, it's so hard to get these older games, and it's hard to admit it at times, and a lot of people have had to go to the roots of getting ROMs to play them, and obviously there's a whole legal thing against that if you don't own the game and everything. So I always stick to downloading ones I own physically, but
exactly.
But the issue is like there's no other way for some people to try and play some of these old games.
It's true, yeah, and that's one of the nice things about it. Microsoft is so adamant about keeping their history, and they want you to be able to play kind of almost everything that is possible. The issue is that they have to go to the publishers of those games in order to get them to okay it for backwards compatibility. But luckily, most seem to be on board with it. Surprisingly, even companies like EA or Square Enix are actually totally on board for it. But it really is kind of this interesting idea because for the most part, you can play every Xbox game that was released by Microsoft on an Xbox Series X. and in some cases with high dynamic range, so HDR, and with frame boost, so you can play older games at like 60 frames a second, rock solid, that maybe used to be about 20 to 30.
Yeah, which obviously like old school gamers would be like, "Oh my god, this is amazing." Whereas like the modern, like younger generation probably won't notice it, but they would appreciate it more because it's more modernized to what they expect. Because I know, like in the past, when I was trying to get my cousins to play some of my older games, they were very much like, "It's so clunky, it's slow," and all this kind of stuff. Whilst at least this gives it a bit more of an opportunity.
Have you played Star Fox recently, the original off of Super Nintendo?
I haven't, no.
Well, it is on the Switch Online, which is surprisingly also a really good resource for older games. The Nintendo Switch Online, it's really affordable, and it has a lot of classic old Super Nintendo and NES games. I hope they increase that, add some Game Boy stuff and GameCube stuff on there eventually. But that game runs at about 10 frames a second. So I was shocked because most of my time was spent with Star Fox 64 when I was younger, not the original Star Fox. I mean, I played it, but back then 10 frames a second seemed totally fine because it was 3D on my Super Nintendo. Whereas nowadays I'm like, how did I play this?
Yeah. I've been getting a lot of that when going back to playing some of these older games. Like things on the Dreamcast, I was just like, again, this is so clunky and just like crazy how like
it was weird when I was playing Black from EA the other day. I was using the controls and I pushed the left trigger to try and aim down the sights, and I threw a grenade. And I was like, how do I zoom in? Because it's from the original Xbox, so it has those old kind of Halo controls, which is you click the stick in to zoom in, and you don't run. There's no sprinting, which just feels awkward and weird nowadays. I'm like, okay, and I beat three levels, two levels, and I'm now 25% of the way through the game because it's a very short game. You can do it in one sitting.
Okay.
But it's fun. It's made by the guys that made Burnout, Criterion, so it's actually a really fun shooter if you want to play an old school shooter that's fun. And it would be a prime example of something that would work really well on xCloud. Not sure if it's part of it though, but you definitely can. You can play Planet Coaster on xCloud, which that one works really well because it's not needing good input latency. So having it a little bit lagged totally works fine because you're just building a theme park.
Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly. So it's an easy laid back kind of game. And but again, like kind of like what we're saying here is that it gives you that opportunity to try out these things. And I kind of viewed xCloud, Game Pass, whatever you call it, as like a demo opportunity to play these games. So it gives you a taster, and then, like you say, you could then go off and actually buy it physically and own it and all that kind of stuff.
It's kind of the return of the rental store in a weird way. It's another way of bringing that back. Like for me growing up, my parents were lucky enough that I was their only kid and I got spoiled. So they rented a game every week for me on the weekend. So that's how I got to play so many different types of games when I was a kid, because it's just too expensive to own one. Oddly enough, more expensive than it is now, even though we think of it as more expensive. But I think that's just because there's more selection now and more games that are available. Even though it's cheaper, everyone's cost of living has gone up. So even though the games are cheaper, there's less money to spend on the games. And there's more games than ever that you can buy. And there's not really any way other than a demo or something like Game Pass here to actually allow you to try something to see if you like it or not. Because honestly, 9 times out of 10, unless you've played something in that series before, you're not going to know if you want to play it.
Exactly. And you don't feel like you're tied in to that game as well. Because on Steam and so many places, games are so cheap that you feel like, I'll go snatch it up. But then your backlog just increases, and you never get around to playing it because you feel like, you've purchased it. So you need to commit some actual time to it. Whilst, like I say, Game Pass, you could just like, I'll just go throw it on, see what it's like for 10 minutes. If it's no good, big deal kind of thing.
Exactly. And, you don't have to waste a ton of money like I did doing that over the years, buying games day one for the 360 and PS3 era.
Yeah. I remember doing it a lot with the GameCube. Like, there were so many games which I see the adverts in the magazines. I was like, oh, this looks great. Played it. It's like, nah, it's not for me. And I was never one for trading in games because you got pence compared to what you really purchased for and stuff. But yeah.
But
so
I think the real problem right now with Game Pass is, like I mentioned before when we were not recording, the issue is kind of the input latency right now. So as technology catches up, like how flat screens used to have horrible input lag, and now it's minuscule, so we don't care. So it's like, on a good TV nowadays, it's going to be about 15 milliseconds or so, which most people aren't going to be able to notice. Whereas a CRT, which is like right behind me there, is going to be basically non-existent, zero, maybe 1 millisecond. So you're not really going to notice the difference eventually with that input lag from having it over the internet. It's just right now, we're not at that point yet for most people.
Yeah, no, exactly. So kind of rounding up as like my very last question and kind of like a little debate. What would be the ideal scenario at the end of this? Do you think, Xbox does this route? Is it that they take over and everyone joins them? So like, say, for instance, Nintendo scrap consoles and they purely make games and they go straight onto Game Pass? Or do we think, let them go off and do their own thing, but pray and hope that everyone else sticks to their own thing so there's still competitiveness? Or is Game Pass going to be Netflix, where it pretty much takes over the media completely?
I think there's kind of a couple different scenarios that happen, and it's going to depend a lot on you and I and everyone else that plays games.
Yeah.
But I think personally, what's likely going to happen is that Xbox is going to be the PlayStation of this generation in terms of what PlayStation was at the Xbox 360 PS3 era, but without screwing up as bad as PlayStation did when that launched. So basically, for anyone that's not familiar with it, you basically had PlayStation and Xbox 360 come out, and everyone was talking about an Xbox 360, but eventually the PS3 kind of caught up to it, and it had great games of its own, and it was the thing that everyone was talking about by the end of that generation. And I think Game Pass and xCloud are going to be those kind of arguments where, everyone's talking about it sort of right now, but how many people do you know that are using it? For me, I have myself and one friend that are using it, and on consoles at least, and another friend that's using it on PC. But everyone else is planning on eventually getting it because they just see that as the most economical and best way of doing it. They're kind of just waiting for those exclusive games to come out that matter. And also when it's easier to get an Xbox console or something like that because they are traditional and they want that box in their house or they want to run it on their PC. But I think that you won't have Nintendo releasing games on Game Pass because Nintendo's sitting on a bunker of money. And as long as there's people like us that'll buy a Nintendo console when it comes out, they won't need to. And then with PlayStation, I think you might find them, they've already put stuff on Game Pass, like MLB The Show. I think you might find some things like that going forward. And Microsoft and Sony actually signed a pact sort of thing. They actually signed an agreement for doing cloud gaming and cloud computing. So it is entirely possible that PlayStation has their own offering that's using Game Pass technology, even though they own Gaikai, which is a streaming platform of their own, which is built into PlayStation Now. They actually still signed something with Microsoft way before, during PS4 and Xbox One times, that they'll kind of maybe work together with them and kind of plan forward, because ultimately it's going to be those three, the old guard, so to speak, up against Google and Amazon once they figure out how to make a game that's good.
Yeah. Oh, just a service that can potentially defeat, like you say, Game Pass or is it Sony Play? Is it because
PlayStation Now?
PlayStation Now, yeah, because they kind of trying to go down that route, aren't they? But it's like
sort of, but they're missing the main thing though, which is having the day one exclusives. So with Ratchet and Clank that just came out, I couldn't subscribe to PlayStation Now and be playing that right now. I have to go buy that game. And if it ever does come on to that, it'll be a while from now and probably only for a short 3-month window. Whereas with Game Pass, I can go play basically anything. I can go play the original Halo if I want to. I can go play Banjo-Kazooie. I can go play Conker's Bad Fur Day. I can play Recore, which is notoriously was a bad game when it came out and got patched and is a bit better now. And I have all those sort of options that aren't going away. I don't have to worry about when they're expiring. And when Game Pass does expire with a game, it lets you know in advance and you get a discount on purchasing it as well.
Oh, okay. But again, like that's a fantastic marketing, isn't it? Like just like you can get the discount and all that kind of stuff to help bring in the people to go down that route. But okay, so here's a scenario for you, right? Because you said about like what they're called, Electric Studios. I used to do Final Fantasy. Forgotten the names now. Haven't completely mind blank.
Square
Enix. What the hell am I going about? So complete mind back. Square Enix, right? They go to Microsoft and they have a body conversation. Bring all the games over there, and then Nintendo do the same. And everyone's talking, and they finally do it. Mario RPG remake. Is that the dream?
I mean, what I would like to see, yes. I think that there's a lot of people out there that won't. But actually, no, for me, the real dream would be for them to actually do a remake, not unlike Final Fantasy VII Remake, but with Chrono Trigger. That's what I would love to see personally. But, and this is probably going to be blasphemous and most people are going to hate me for it, I would actually like to see Chrono Trigger done as an action game. So maybe like a Neo or a Devil May Cry, but with RPG mechanics. So this is getting into a completely different topic, but I want it to be that and play kind of like a Devil May Cry or something along those lines, where you can give commands to your people that are with you, like Mass Effect. So you get into these moments where you can pause, throw a command out there, and still fight. And I think that'd be awesome. And I want it to be on Game Pass.
Is that not basically what not Children of Mana? It's one of the Mana games that they did a remake of.
Trials of Mana.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and they kind of did that, didn't they? Where it's like an action game, and it was kind of. I'm guessing that's kind of the dream for Chrono Trigger.
Yeah, but with ray tracing.
Gotta get it in there.
or they can just make it look like the Guilty Gear Strive that just came out as well, which looks like an anime.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah.
That would be
perfect. Yeah, I know which one you're on about. Yeah, exactly. Okay.
And ideally, if they can make someone develop it, CyberConnect 2.
Right, okay. There we go.
Who did Dragon Ball Z Kakarot.
If you're seeing this, which is unlikely, listen to Ty. Yeah. He knows what he's talking about. Make it happen. Right. No,
seriously, like with everything though, I see the future of gaming being more smaller games that are allowed to blow up to be something as a bigger experience. Yeah. And developers building a platform or trying different things and being able to try and make things work and make things not work. Back like they used to in the good old days, because games didn't cost a ton to develop. And if you have looked into Unreal Engine 5 at all, that stuff is just astounding what that can do with a very little work. Yeah.
And like for me personally, I know we haven't really touched on it. My idea is that I hope, however this all turns out, that it does not affect indie development. I hope, if anything, it improves it and helps people make their own games.
It has so far. It actually has a lot.
That's great to hear.
A lot of indie games will release, like Chris Tales that just came out, which is getting a lot of comparisons to Chrono Trigger, weirdly enough.
Oh, okay.
It's actually on Game Pass day one.
Oh, right, okay.
if you subscribe to Game Pass, you can go play it. Streets of Rage 4 was the same thing. River City Girls, same thing. So there's a lot of stuff that just comes on there day one, and that makes it more affordable for everyone to try more games, so that you don't have to be pigeonholed into playing Warzone all the time, or playing, Fortnite all the time, or whatever your game of choice is. So
yeah, exactly. So hopefully things will evolve and be better for the industry, because it's an exciting time, I think, because again, like there isn't that much change with this generation. I think this is like the main focus for what the industry's going to hold, because when
I think it's going to be a healthier gaming industry.
Yeah, I really hope so, and more collaboration, and hopefully an improvement to everyone's life in a way.
Yes, as we soon can all go outside, we can take our phones outside and our Switches outside and play Xbox on our Switch or on our phone, if that ever happens with the Switch, which I think they should do. Honestly, I'm surprised it hasn't happened already.
Look, could you imagine if it was like Pokemon Go, but with every game out there, so everyone's out there playing games, talking and walking, and getting exercise and playing a game at the same time.
I'll be inside.
You have a treadmill inside. You can't do it anyway.
I have a rowing machine. It's different.
Anyway, we digress. So that's been our opinions about the latest news on the plans for Xbox going forward. Let us know what you think in the comment section below. Do you think it is the future? Are you excited about it? Do you detest the idea and think it's like bad for the industry? It's going to ruin physical gaming or anything like that? Let us know down in the comment section below. And firstly, thank you very much for joining me, Ty.
No problem, anytime.
This was very spontaneous. I just messaged and said, do you want to do this? And you had a very busy schedule today, so I really appreciate you coming.
Yeah, anytime. I mean, I squeezed you in somehow.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. And make sure to subscribe to Down the Warp Pipe, a fantastic channel. Talks about, well, you talk about all sorts of things in gaming, don't you? And
yeah, sort of everything. And my most recent video was what I would change in Mass Effect. But I mean, I'll just everything and anything, just different little things, how we talk about games, how I think about certain games. And, it's about this, a conversation. What do you think? And, mention it down below. Subscribe to How to Game Differently if you haven't subscribed to How to Game Differently yet. I know you guys are out there. Subscribe. But it helps. But honestly, thanks to everyone for watching it and this video and everything else. But for me, I think Game Pass, and more specifically xCloud, is going to allow more people to get into games, and I think it'll bring in those younger gamers and mobile gamers that exist that are maybe playing Fortnite on their phones to play more of what us traditional gamers like out of a game, and they can try that and see what that's like. And maybe it'll hook them. Maybe it won't, but you don't know unless you try.
Exactly. And that's the positive here, isn't it? That it's a platter of opportunity for new people. So yeah, that's fantastic. So again, thank you very much for joining us. I've been James from How to Game Differently.
I've been Ty. Still impressed.
And subscribe to Down the Warp Pipe. Please subscribe to How to Game Differently. And if you enjoy this kind of style of content, again, let us know. And hopefully we'll speak to you guys soon in the future. Thanks again. And speak to you soon. Goodbye.
Take care. Game on.
Bye.